So the AtariBox. Let's say the AtariBox is successful and you can go to the store, pick one up, bring it home, plug it in. What can you expect to play on this console? Well, the AtariBox is certainly a weird one. Being a Linux-based console is sort of like a Steam machine, but then it's also going to have the custom Atari part of it. The custom Atari store Linux thing, where they're going to have their own kind of operating system, I guess, or emulator, I guess you'd call it. So this dual system, if that's what it truly is, kind of reminds me of the base PS3 when it first came out, because on the original PS3, you used to be able to have this. This is very rare, very rarely this happened with people, but you used to be able to have both the PS3's operating system and Linux. You used to be able to switch between both. You used to be able to switch it from a console, PS3, to a computer with Linux. And this worked really well. Eventually, Sony patched this out of the PS3. It was a really cool system, and I think that's what Atari's going to try and do with this. I think they're going to try to emanate the original PS3. So, with that out the way, what can we expect games-wise? Well, we know that it's going to be coming with a bunch of old 2600 games, but can we expect 5200 games? 7800? XEGS games? Can we even see Atari Jaguar games? It's powerful enough to run them. We know that. AMD's custom hardware's inside. You know? How about the Atari games that were published after the failure of the Jaguar, but before the 2013 bankruptcy? Games like Godzilla Save the Earth for PS2, or Godzilla Unleashed for the Wii. I'm not sure how that would work on the AtariBox without motion controls, but they'll figure it out. I want to see Godzilla Unleashed. How about a new Godzilla game? That'd be amazing. Or how about the Dragon Ball Z games they published? Yeah. I'll have a Wikipedia list of all the games that Atari published for a while. I mean, Bullet Witch is on there. There's a lot of weird ones, a lot of mediocre ones, and some really good ones. You know. So we do know that Atari signed a publishing deal with Fig. Fig is a kind of crowdfunding service that isn't really like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. It's kind of different. Fig uses a mixed model that include both individual backing and the opportunity for uncredited investors to invest as to obtain a share of the future revenues for a successful project. So it's kind of like instead of just a bunch of random people on Fig, you can have some companies donate some money and they get a share. So yeah, so the publishing deal that they signed with Fig includes 2 new games, 1 remake of an Atari classic, and 1 new IP. Now what would Atari put out that's a remake of an Atari classic? Alone in the Dark? Sword Quest? Adventure? Well, Space Invaders, I don't know how you're going to remake that. Space Invaders doesn't work with modern graphics. But the new IP could be interesting, because we don't really know this new Atari. Remember, Atari went bankrupt again in 2013 and was bought out by like a millionaire. Fred Chesney, some guy with a lot of money bought Atari, basically, in 2013 after they went bankrupt. And that Atari that went bankrupt in 2013 was Infogrames that bought the Atari name, so Atari has a weird history. A lot of confusing stuff. So, we do know that Tempest 4000 is in the works, as well as a remastered Roller Coaster Tycoon. So, I don't think these are the 2 games, because these were announced before the Fig thing came up. So, I think that, you know, these wouldn't be the games. These wouldn't make sense. Even though the remake would coincide with the Roller Coaster Tycoon, but Tempest 4000 isn't really a new IP. You know, it's still Tempest. So, that's all the Atari branded games. If you can think of any other Atari branded games you would like to see on the system. Remember, Atari has a lot of history from the 70s to now. There's a lot of games published. Even some recent ones like Minimum. Now we have the Linux part of the console. This is where it gets interesting. Linux isn't very big when it comes to gaming compared to Windows. But with the recent Steam machines, a couple years ago, was that 2 years ago now? We have more games being ported to Linux. So if we can put Steam on the Atari box, what can you expect to play on the Linux part? Well, Linux isn't big, like I mentioned. And also, don't expect to do 4K 60 FPS gaming. Don't probably expect to do 1080p gaming on this thing. The Atari box isn't going to be a crazy powerhouse. Expect it to be probably more powerful than the Nintendo Switch, but maybe less powerful than even the base Xbox One or PS4. So expect to be doing games at 720p if you're going to be using the Linux part. Just saying. Like, if you can get past that lower resolution, this might be something worth picking up if it's successful. Alright, so this is just going to be a list of a bunch of random games I found on Steam that do work with Linux/SteamOS, because SteamOS is Linux, just a customized one. And there's more games than I can name in one video. I have a link down below, because you can go to Steam and select Linux/SteamOS, and you can see them all. So, what can you play? Well, from what I found, you're not going to get Call of Duty. Neither are you going to get Battlefield, unless you use one of those weird workarounds, but I don't know if that's worth it. But you can get Insurgency. Insurgency is a kind of indie, hardcore FPS game. Very hardcore, very tactical, very slow, very methodical. So you can get that, as well as the upcoming Insurgency Sandstorm is said to be Linux compatible. We also have Counter-Strike. If you're not into multiplayer FPS games, but still want FPS, Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light Redux both work on Linux. So we might be able to expect that Metro Exodus will also work on Linux. But I'm not sure if the Atari box will handle that. So you might have to put it down to 720p, maybe medium graphic settings. Okay, so maybe you don't want FPS games at all, so here's some strategy games that work with Linux. Wargame series, Wargame Red Dragon, Wargame European Escalation, Wargame Air Land Battle. These all work with Linux. Wargame Red Dragon is a great game. I have several videos on my channel. I haven't played it recently, but it's a great game. Civilization also works with Linux. All the Civilization games. Total War works with Linux. Total War Warhammer 2 does not work right now with Linux, but is confirmed it will eventually work with Linux. So there's some games that will never be on consoles at all. These are very hardcore strategy games, since mouse and keyboard is usually required for a strategy game. Not always. You can do a controller. It plays very badly. Because I remember Command and Conquer Red Alert 3 was on Xbox 360, and I played it. I beat it, but it wasn't fun. Okay, so if you're not interested in FPS or strategy games, there's a couple side scrollers that work. Sundered, the hand-drawn kind of side-scroller action game, works on Linux, as well as a game called Demon Peak, which has really cool art, really cool pixel art, I thought. Hollow Knight works on Linux. I mean, if you don't want a side-scroller, there are several open-world survival games that work on Linux. Both Ark Survival Evolved and Rust work on Linux. Not sure if you'll be able to play Ark Survival Evolved. You might be able to at lower settings. As well as The Long Dark works on Linux. So there's also a game called Wolcen Lords of Combat that, while not a Linux game right now, it is confirmed it will eventually be on Linux. So the Atari box is something I want it to succeed, because I think that we need another competitor. Obviously, Steam machines failed because they were horribly thought out, having 14 different companies make like 6 different models each. There were so many of them, it confused consumers and none of them sold. Atari seems to be taking the Steam machine idea and making it much simpler by having one company, having one machine, what the Steam machine should have been all along, one machine that plays multitude of games at medium, around console price, right? That's what Atari's doing. And I think that this might disrupt the big three. I mean, obviously Nintendo is kind of off on their own with their thing, but PlayStation and Xbox are kind of, I don't know, they could improve, and I think that the Atari box, if it's successful, we might see some improvements, because right now the Xbox One, it's pretty laggy. Like, if you go to the store on Xbox One and just keep moving up and down, it will freeze. Like it'll just freeze. Load times are horrendous on the Xbox One. Like, they were so bad I got an external hard drive. Anyway, let me back off the rant a bit. Tell me if you're interested in the Atari box. Will you get it? Will you not get it?
Success so clearly in view. Or is it merely a trick of the light?